Hey, what's up, fam? I've been giving a lot of thought recently over the future, really, of Asta and where his control over his swords will go, and the anti-magic, how he's going to progress, and what exactly, he's going to be like down the line. And obviously, I'm not talking about his character, I'm talking about specifically his abilities. Now, we know a bit about, I'd say probably around half of the book and swords because we know that, they used to belong to Licht. We know that the anti-magic seems to come from the book itself and then relates to the swords, and that stems from this creature. I'm not going to call him a demon because of my own theories. This creature, this unknown creature within it, that has this ability, if gone through the anti-magic, can control the body of the user. And because of all this and some of the recent events when we saw the true forms of the swords and how it kind of relates to one of my theories around them, that I think my, I guess, further progressed theory of how Asta is going to be further down the line, is a bit validated. And what I mean by that is when it just kind of, for example, when we see Licht draw the swords and he's touching them, all that ashy, like black layer of it, like crumbles away. It doesn't just vanish, it crumbles, like it falls off. So it's definitely some form of odd layer on top of it. And it makes me think that the swords themselves were designed so only Licht can use them. He can only use them because as they are normally, it's more of these. If you recall the one shot, if you've read the Black Clover one shot, it wasn't originally anti-magic that was being used for the swords. It was actually magic stealing, and it would absorb. Let me see if I can find the one shot in the middle of this. It would absorb the energy, of an attack and then apply it onto it. It's kind of like what the second sword does, but really that was the overall theme, and that seems to be what it is for the original abilities of the sword that Lick's using it. And it makes me wonder, what exactly it's going to be like for Asta, because it wasn't just, you know, they come undone and, they have they, kind of this different appearance. They had a whole upgraded version of their abilities. We saw that it was able to fire a multitude of magic slashes after that, as well as it could fire huge beams, and not only that, when it was used, there was this additional aspect of the anti-magic second sword of the demon dweller sword, that it acted more like a magic lightning rod, kind of like what the black form is like for Asta. And so I believe that the anti-magic energy that layers it when Lick's not touching it is like a defense mechanism. I think it's much more like a system set up so nobody else can use them, because obviously uh, we know that if anybody else uses them, for instance, the demon Dweller Sword, it will absorb the magic of the person touching it. We know that the Demon Slayer Sword will kind of like make someone's magical flow extremely disproportionate. Like it's very sporadic. They wouldn't be able to control their abilities, as well as obviously the overall, I guess, encumbrance of it as well. But it definitely feels much more like it is like it's set specifically for if anybody else besides the owner has it, so no one else could use this extremely powerful artifact or weaponry except for the user. And where I would like to believe that will further progress is like, how does Asta wield this? How is he going to use the swords and their true ability? Like, I doubt. I don't see the idea of that they have these more empowered versions existent and Asta doesn't get to use them. But how would he? Because if it only is designed for Licht, how is Asta going to be able to use them? You know. One second, I'm just gonna. I've been slowly trying to is slowly trying to look for the panel of it being actually magic thieving swords. I'd have to look for it and find the one shot. But for those who have, it's a whole different idea. But where I would believe that it's actually possible for Asta, like anybody else, how would they be able to unlock the abilities of the swords themselves if they couldn't that they couldn't get rid of this anti-magic layer over them that it seems to be set up in place for it, so no one else can use it. And the way that Asta actually manifests his black form, I feel like would be the perfect solution, because if it's really just anti-magic energy layered over it, we know that the way that Asta achieves his black form is he's circulating that anti-magic layer on top of him. And it's not so much as he's just, I'm going to activate this power inside of me. He's more of drawing the energy from the swords into his body instead. So instead of the anti-magic being on the swords, he's kind of like forcefully expunging all this energy out of it and then clouding it onto himself. And I think that is part of why the swords, once he is using it in his black form, it turns like this. Instead of being like this ashy, dirty look to it, it's like this jet black. I guess it would be kind of like it's kind of like how do you draw water like out of the ground? It's there, but if you use techniques enough, I'm not going to act like I know off the top of my head how to some technique to draw water out from the ground, but how you kind of like are pulling it upwards instead of the anti-magic kind of flowing naturally into the sword. It's being like aggressively like pulled towards it to where it's just layering it over it. And I think a really good example of this is when he's wielding a sword that he didn't draw the power from for the form. It's still in its normal state. It's not like any sword that he's using at the time of is going to go through that effect. Maybe once he gets it enough through two swords, he'll get a second wing and a second horn. But where I'm kind of like going with this would be another idea. If he then further pulls the anti-magic out from the jet black sword and puts it into his body, further progresses the form, makes himself more powerful. And instead of the anti-magic going into the sword, it just goes pretty much immediately into Asta from the grimoire to the swords and then into Asta. So that anti-magic layer, theoretically, that's going over the swords doesn't go there. And so you could kind of imagine Asta in the form of his black form. He's got the wing, the fang, the red eyes, the horn, and he's just eventually just layered in this black energy, this anti-magic energy. But the swords themselves are, in that crumbled away light or white look, where we see that with Lick's ability. It having just this pitched white design to it, while still having in Asta's control. And theoretically, he's the only person that could do it that way, because it's not so much as he has the special power to do it. It's so because anybody else tried to do it, circulate the anti-magic through their body, it would just disrupt their own magic and just make them weaker. Because unless Lick doesn't have magic, even though we know he has mana, he's got magic, if he tried to absorb that anti-magic the way that Asta does, it would just mess with his own body. So it's really a way that Asta could achieve that empowered sword form while not having to be licked. And a very logical reason why only he would be able to do it without it being some special character ability. It's only because he's defect that he's able to do that. He's so defective, he doesn't have magic, but then he's the only one that can kind of cheat that ability, just like how he can use the anti-magic swords. He's the only one that would be able to kind of, I guess, drain the anti-magic enough out of the swords to where he can, access this kind of true form of them, this pitched white sword instead of a pitched black sword, to where they have these empowered abilities. But I don't know. Tell me what you think about this. I think it's pretty logical because it's a very similar idea to how Asta could use the swords in general. Because if per se that the this anti-magic layering it over it is in fact a defensive system in place so no one else can use it. But Asta, because he has no magic and he's physically capable of wielding these swords, he's able to take something that should pretty much be a purely defensive kind of system and use it offensively. It'd be like if somebody, if you had an electric fence, like you had a post just covered in electric fence wire, and somebody who was like somehow immune to electricity could just like pick it up and then use it as a weapon without it damaging themselves. Not a very good comparison, but kind of effective. If you know what you mean. He's being able to use something that no one else could use only because he's able to pretty much use a security system as an offensive and defensive weapon. But like I said, tell me in the comments below and what you think about this whole theory of how Asta could further progress his black form while progressing to use the true forms of the anti-magic swords. And I would really appreciate it if you would also thumbs up the video, maybe spread it around and show, befriend the like button, tell a friend that might also really like Black Clover. We can get it so it'll appear in people's trending boxes for Black Clover, getting that algorithm. I guess not trending. The algorithm is makes much more sense. I don't expect it to get trending, but I'd really appreciate it. Like I said, if you'd befriend the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe for more. I'm gonna try and do a discussion video of something every week, which I mean it'll most likely be either Black Clover, Fairy Tail, or Eden Zero, but we could easily do others as well as I do streams on the weekends, on Sundays. And like I said, other than that, I really appreciate if you'd subscribe and check out my other videos. But other than that, I'd appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.